Okay, so the first thing we need to do is prep the model for the game engine. For the most part, we're going to be following all of the steps in this guide from Bohemia. Um, it's pretty straightforward. There are some things I won't necessarily do in this order, and I'll explain why when I get to them. Um, you can see so far I've just kind of set up the appropriate file structure. Um, this is pretty straightforward to do also. Um, First thing I'm going to do is just kind of export what I have now in order to just kind of make sure all the materials and everything look good, because I already set those up as well, or at least the textures. Um, so yeah, I just kind of do this to make sure that's looking good. And this is pretty straightforward. Exporting the FBX, you do so with these settings, and then once you see it in your mod, you can just register and import as a model. Obviously, that's what we're dealing with. And there we go. We have our gun facing in the wrong direction and still with a magazine, but that's not the point. I just want to get these materials set up. I will add my textures to it. Okay, materials are set up. Texture's okay. You get what you pay for. It's not bad. So yeah, now that everything there looks good, most of the work now is just going to be in Blender. And as we saw here, my gun, I can't really see it now, but when you open it, it's not facing the same direction as other weapons, and that is because step one is making sure we have the proper orientation. So for Blender and 3ds Max, it is the Y plus axis. And if you're not super familiar with Blender, that is the Y plus axis. So I'm going to select all of my objects, and I'm just going to rotate it along the Y plus axis. There we go. I will apply all transforms. It's good to get into a habit of that. I never want to have anything but zeros and ones in scale and rotation. So we got that down. What's next? Object cutting. So this is already something that I'm not going to do right away. On my weapon, the only object I need to cut is the magazine, obviously, because that's going to be its own model and prefab. And then I'll probably cut the compensator here, because just in case somebody wants to either run it without a compensator, which we can do because this model comes with the actual barrel end modeled, but also if there's any suppressor mods that want to get used, the compensator will have to come off because it'll also be a barrel attachment, and we won't have any clipping issues with third-party suppressors. So I don't cut these objects right away because I like to wait until I'm doing my memory points, and then that way I can have them synced up between the exterior models and my weapon model. The first thing I will do, and this is important if you are trying to um, utilize vanilla character animations, I'm going to try and get this weapon as close to the same orientation as the vanilla AK as possible. I see a lot of people will import a weapon and they'll try to use a vanilla animation, and their their weapon is just kind of, it's not sitting in the hands right, and they always wonder, well, what do I have to do to get it to sit in the hands right? And it always comes down to, oh, well, we have to make a new IK animation to get them to handle it right. But it's not all of it, because then you might fix just the holding animation, but then when you go to reload, the gun kind of shifts out of the hand and it just becomes messy. So in order to utilize Bohemia's animations, you really want your root, your world root on this weapon to be as close to the scene root as this weapon. So I can see here it's just below the trigger, right at the bottom of the trigger guard. I'm just going to do the same thing here. I'm going to try to get the world origin right there. I'm going to try to get that about in the same spot. There we go. Okay, and now if I just do another export, this is why I usually just do an initial export to kind of get an idea of where everything's at, because I like to, as I'm working, I like to just export to Infusion, and then I can see what my changes have done. So right here, we don't have any bones, don't worry about that. We will soon, but the world origin now is about in the same spot. And we know these weapons have very similar dimensions, so these should line up when I put this into a prefab. I can double down on that by going ahead and creating the prefab and then throwing this into a character's hand so I can make more fine-tune adjustments. Okay, so in order to get this model in a prefab or make a prefab for it, we're just going to copy an existing one. It's the easiest. Is also, if we're inheriting from Bohemia stuff, if there's any updates to it and stuff like that, it's less maintenance we have to do on this mod going forward. So we have the AK-74 base. Ideally, I would like to not inherit from this, probably duplicate it to my mod. The reason I want to duplicate it is because I don't want to inherit from it, because the base AK-74 has sights that go up to like 1 kilometer or something ridiculous, whereas our AKS has this sight that just flips between like 100 meters and 300 to 400 meters. So if I inherit from this, I'm going to be stuck with certain options that I can't change. One of those would be sights. So I'm going to duplicate it to my mod. I'm going to call it Rifle KS74 UN base. And then I'm going to rename the folder it's in to AKS74 UN. Okay. Perfect. Now we open up the prefab and oh my god, it's the AK-74. I don't want that. So the only control over model in prefabs is the mesh object. We go into here, change this out with our AKS. Ta-da! The model's changed, and you'll notice it's got 2 mags, and they're not in the right spot. Not our concern. Don't worry about it. We will get to that down the line. More importantly, we have a weapon we can put into a character's hands, and we can see where we're at in terms of model location. So I'm going to save this prefab. Okay. Equip our rifle. Let's see where we're at. Okay. Alright, so there you go. Just putting it at the scene route did a pretty good job of getting the rifle in the hand location that I wanted. The magazine is kind of in the way, the actual magazine, and not the one that's attached to the 3D model. Where's my gun? There we go. I'm just going to move that really quick. By changing the position. I can go into more detail on what exactly all this stuff is that I'm doing. I'm editing the prefab in the world editor right now, but again, I'm not finally adjusting anything. I'm just getting that out of the way so that I can see my hand placement better. Okay, what do we got? Yeah, I would say it's pretty good right off the bat. That's not ideal. The fact that we have kind of gripping the front sight looks good that way. Alright, so I would say that we pretty much nailed the positioning of it. I'll put up with that for now because this tutorial is not about changing character animations. Okay, so we have the model, but shooting one muzzle flash is in nowhere, the bolt's not moving, the trigger's not moving, nothing's moving. So that's where configuring the model comes in.